If you're new here, welcome to my channel. If you've been here along for the ride, welcome back. My name is Bex and this is Bex Books. So today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up video. Yeah, I had a pretty cute June month. I only read 8 books, but you know, I'm going to be using Storygraph for my stats here. So out of the 8 books, I rated all of the books but one of them, which was House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. So this is actually for a secret vlog, and I'll be telling y'all my thoughts and feelings and my rating for this book in that secret vlog, which will come out once I finish reading all of the books on that vlog. But nonetheless, out of the other books, I had 1 1-star, 1 3-star, 1 3.25 star, 1 4-star, and then I had 3 5-stars, but one of them was actually a reread. So I already knew before reading it that I was going to rate it that 5. So 2 new 5 stars. Okay. I read a total of 3,077 pages in the month of June, but the majority of the books I read were fantasy, 4 of them to be exact. All the books I read last month were fiction, and only 1 book was below 300 pages. The rest were between 300 and 499 pages. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get into the actual books. I'm going to start with that 1 star. I'm counting it as an actual rated read. I did get over halfway through Lush Life. The reason for me wanting to read this book was because I wanted to educate myself about what happens in our government political systems. How is gerrymandering determined and acted out? However, this book did not provide that. It was mainly just a very vague backdrop to the story. I was hoping for terminology and just a great place to start cross-referencing and finding kind of a foundation to learn and to look further into. This mainly is about a detective who, it starts off with the early morning hours, and it really just follows his life as he works this murder. And it's just more so about his life, like his day-to-day thoughts and actions, than it is about the mystery of how these people were killed, what's happening in this neighborhood. That's all just kind of second, it seems. So what the actual murder mystery is, I have suspicions, but basically there were these college students that had been partying at a bougie scene where in this local neighborhood places are being bought out and being made into more modern, just completely for people that don't even live in that area. And so they're leaving this bar and they're leaving to go to the subway. They decide to take like a shortcut, or they take this route to make it to the subway. Well, they go through this neighborhood where the people that actually live in this area, there's some young people, some teenagers, same age as the kids leaving the bar, that are out there at night, and there's some type of tense situation and altercation. Kids end up dying. It then is the detective coming on the scene and trying to find out who actually shot who and like what's going on. Yeah, no, this book was not it for me. There was just like one scene in the book, and I'm talking like 200 and something pages. There was one page where I was like, oh, okay. And it had nothing to do with gerrymandering or anything like that. It just kind of gave me an idea of what New York life it can be like when there is cops trying to tape off a scene in a very busy area where people are walking, and I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe even thousands, trying to cross an area where they're trying to keep a scene from being contaminated. And that was really interesting for me to think about. I'd never thought about what that must be like in New York. But nonetheless, besides that, I got nothing from this. And I got to the point where I don't care how he makes his coffee. I don't care how the detective makes coffee. I don't care what the detective wore or what he ate for lunch. it's just way too slow paced, and it's just about stuff that I'm indifferent to. So I ended up DNFing. I rarely DNF. Just a few books every year do I DNF, but I did DNF this, and I'm giving it that 1-star rating. Do not recommend. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is the 3-star, which is The Pink Hotel by Liska Jacobs. I'll put a picture here. I was given an ARC of this book through NetGallery, and I did read it. It is about the Beverly Hills Hotel, basically, and it's about the fires that were happening in California a couple of years back, and how very wealthy people stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel during that time frame. I don't know, it was a really messy book, and I was just kind of annoyed. I feel like it was an outdated book, and I know I'm not the only person that felt that way, because after I read it, I went and looked at other reviews, and I was like, okay, yeah, it wasn't just me. But I am not convinced that she genuinely believed what she was trying to say was bad about wealthy people. So there's this young couple, I don't even remember their names, but they just got married, and they're being considered for management at the hotel because the gentleman and his wife that manage this Beverly Hills hotel, called the Pink Hotel in the book, are getting older, and they're thinking, okay, maybe it's time that we retire. And so we follow this young couple while they are in training to become management, but during that week, the California fires happen, and they get to see how the wealthy are when they're bored or they're anxious and they have all this money and they're used to being catered to, like how they will find ways to entertain themselves or find ways to make themselves feel okay or to distract themselves. And specifically, the husband wants to be a part of this world, and then the wife, she is disgusted by how they're acting, and she keeps leaving the hotel and seeing what's happening out in the streets in Los Angeles while these people are basically hidden away and behind the walls of this hotel. That's basically the book. The author was trying to put the wealthy in a bad light through the wife's eyes, but really, I don't think anybody was convinced that the author was really writing a bunch of just party scenes and just like early 2000s vibes, rich mean girls and bigger than life parties. And that was the majority of the book. There were like these bridging sections of the wife, and then that was it. It wasn't convincing. I didn't take anything from the book, and I looked at other people's reviews and they felt the same way, that it was just a party book and just a bunch of horrible rich people having fun and not really having to care about the world around them. So I didn't get any other message but that. So I just gave it 3 stars, and I was like, okay, great. Moving on with my life. That was whatever. Whatever. I don't even know what I just read. So the next book was my 3.25 rating. And actually, I have that book somewhere. 1 second. Okay, I found it. I feel like I read this forever ago. I seriously didn't even realize that this was on this wrap up. And that is The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. This is the second book in the Dark Tower series. It's either the Dark Tower series or the Gunslinger series, but yeah, I give it 3.25 stars. I loved how I tabbed this one, so I used all purple and orange tabs, and the cover is purple and orange, so thought that was pretty cool. And I did purple, and then I didn't have orange at the time, so I did yellow. This is obviously the next book in a series, so it'll be a little limited in what I can say. Basically, we have Rowan, the gunslinger that is chasing the man in black across the desert. Rowan is not from our world, our universe. He is from a different universe that's very dystopian, and the man in black is the devil, is pretty much the devil. And Rowan has promised the people he's loved that he will chase this man and he will catch him and he will destroy him. And that's like from the very first book, from the very first page, from the back of the book. It's all about Rowan chasing the man in black. And this book specifically, it's all about these doors. There are 3 doors, and it's very bizarre. It's very different from the first book. It's very bizarre. Very Stephen King. I mean, sometimes I was like, what's even happening? Because Stephen King knows how to write things where there is a kind of like a realistic plane that we're going through, but then there's also just disturbing images or thoughts or just things that pop up in a book. So I love Stephen King, and there's books I've read by him that I always give that 4 to 5 stars. Right now, for the Gunslinger series or the Dark Tower series, I'm definitely intrigued. I definitely want to keep reading, but they've been about 3 stars for me. I gave this one just a little bit over. I definitely like this one better than the first one. I've read It, Tommyknockers, Pet Sematary, and Carrie. I believe those are the ones that I've read. I gave It 5 stars. I absolutely loved that book. And I gave Dreamcatcher, I believe, 4.7 stars. I've read that one too, if I didn't say that one before. I can't remember Pet Sematary. I think it was a 4-star. Tommyknockers was either a 4 or 5, I believe. But I gave Carrie 3 stars. Carrie rated kind of low for me. And then this one I'm giving that kind of 3-star range. So overall, I always do enjoy his books, but some are definitely way better than others. So yeah, it's decent. I do recommend. All right, let's see what's next. So the next one is my 4-star read, and let's see what that one was. So I'll put a picture here. My 4-star read was At Graves Inn by Jeanine Frost. This is the 3rd book in the Night Huntress series. This is not the best series at all. This is 100% just for entertainment. I did give it 4 stars because I do not have high expectations whatsoever for any of these books, so I tend to be pleased. I'm like, okay, I got exactly what I wanted out of these books. In these books, we're following Kat Crawford, who is our main character. She is half vampire, half human. She is a vampire bounty hunter, and she's got a love interest, Bones, and he is a master vampire, and they have a whole thing between them. There are ghost ghouls, there's witches, even like Egyptian goddesses in this series. It makes me laugh because it is intentionally pretty funny at times. It is adult. There's definitely some erotic sections in this book as well that are eyebrow raising. It's just got some really funny humor. And so I love vampires. It's one of my favorite things to read about. So I look for just a book series that talks about vampires. And I listen to this book while I'm driving. A lot of times for work, I have to drive out all the way like an hour out of town. And so on my way to work, early in the morning, I'll get an hour in of this book when I listen to this series. And I'm kind of sad because it's about to end. It's always nice when you stumble upon something that's easy, doesn't take a lot of mind energy, and is just something that you can go back to. So yeah, I've read the first 3 books now in the series. I'm about to read the 4th one, probably at the end of this month. Because right now I'm listening to Black Beauty, and then I plan on listening to Crying in H Mart or at H Mart. I have 4 more, so that's okay. That'll take, because I usually listen to 1 a month in the series. So it's July and I'm gonna be on number 4, so August, 5, September 6th. That's so perfect because I started this series in October last year and I'm gonna end it in October this year. That's the kind of stuff that makes me so happy. Okay, the overall plot twist of The Night Huntress is just basically Kat figuring out if she can be good. She believes vampires are bad. She believes they're evil, and she's half vampire. So it's kind of a journey of self-discovery. Definitely like Supernatural, the show vibes with, you know, if you've watched that show, you know what I'm talking about, that they learn things about who they are and stuff, and then they have to determine whether they're good or evil. So that's kind of what that series is about. And yeah, I've really been enjoying it, and I find it really funny. And I tend to give it a good 4-star. I don't think I mean, don't quote me, I don't think I'd ever give it a 5 because I think there has to be like literary merit for a 5, but I will give books just based off of how entertaining they were up to a 4-star rating just out of pure enjoyment. That brings us to the 5-star reads. So the first 5-star I'm going to talk about is the reread, which is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I read this book when I was in high school. I think I was a junior, and I really, really loved it, and it had a really huge impact on me. I never forgot it. It's pretty bizarre, to be honest. What it's about is it's once again a dystopian world, or it's not a dystopian, it's a utopian world. Or is it? Babies are made in tubes, like they're just cloned. Babies are not made through the birds and the bees kind of thing anymore. And they're conditioned into a caste system from the time they're born. It's determined who they are and what they're going to do. However, a woman that, you know, had been in the system goes on vacation, on holidays, if they call it. So people that are higher up on the totem pole and they're in the caste system, they've been literally made to do higher thinking things. They get to go on holidays. Well, her and a couple of other people go on holiday, and there is a crash of some sort, and she gets left behind. And it's found out years and years later that she was pregnant. And there's a whole thing with that, right? Well, this gentleman, this young man that she gave birth to, it's all about where he fits in the society that the world has become. And it has a lot of philosophical questions, and it's also forewarning of like where society is going. And for it being an older book, it really stands the test of time. It's actually not that hard to read. Now, I will say I tried to listen to the audiobook this time around, and I don't recommend personally listening to the audiobook because the audiobook is like this stuffy voice of I think he might even be British, I don't even know. But I couldn't find a good audiobook. And when I read it with my eyes, I think it was a much better experience, and I enjoyed it a lot more. And also just saying that as a high schooler reading this book and loving it, that says a lot. It's not that hard of a read is what I'm getting at. If me as a high schooler could really enjoy it and enjoy it again today, I don't think it's a difficult read whatsoever. Okay, so the next 5-star read was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, right here. I loved this book. This book got me right in the feels. Something I'll say is that most people I know really loved it, but there are a few people I know that didn't. And I think you have to go into this book understanding that TJ Klune is writing in a way that's kind of wandering and lost, and it's slow paced. So Under the Whispering Door is about death. It's about a lawyer who has died, and a reaper comes to get him and bring him to an in-between kind of like resting stop where he meets Hugo, who is responsible for this resting spot. And the whole entire purpose of these resting spots is for people that have just passed to come to terms with what their life meant, and just kind of to get clarity and be able to pass on. Hugo is in charge of this resting point, and Wallace comes to the resting point initially as a really bad person, but feeling kind of lost, like he doesn't understand like what his life could have meant, and feeling unfulfilled. And the book kind of wanders and meanders through him determining who he was, who he wishes he was, who he wants to be. And it's very loosely plotted. It is a lot of just about life. It's really funny too. The characters are great. TJ Klune is an amazing writer. I absolutely love his writing, and I haven't met anybody else that writes like him. And he's probably one of my favorite authors now at this point. But he, the main character, just keeps staying at this resting place, and he never makes a decision to pass on. So then the people over Hugo, I don't even know what you'd call them, what we would consider maybe like a god, but they're not, are telling our character, like, are you going to pass on? What's going on? And that's kind of like where the book, like, that's the plot, is like figuring out, like, is he going to pass on? When is he going to pass on? And that kind of stuff. It's so good. So good. Highly recommend. 5 out of 5 stars. You're missing out if you don't read it, in my opinion. But yeah, just know that it is a very like slow kind of, just, I picture like floating on your back in water. Like you're not really trying to get to any end place. You're really just experiencing the book. And if you go into it with that mindset, I think you'll like it a lot more. The last book that I read was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I read this for my local book club. I loved this book so much. Oh my gosh, I loved it. Kaya, the main character, she is abandoned. Her father is abusive, and she had siblings and she had a mom, but because the father was hitting them and was a drunk, her 2 oldest siblings left first, and then her mom one day just leaves and never comes back. And then lastly, her brother, who she was very close to, tells her he has to go, he can't stay here anymore. And she's the only one that stays behind and kind of looks after her dad, who is horrible. And then one day he just doesn't show up, and it's presumed that he's probably died. We don't know. And so then she is just by herself out in the marsh of, I believe it's North Carolina. Yep. She is just living out there. She's deemed the marsh girl by the local closest city. And she's basically feral. And it's her life trying to survive on her own. And there's 2 parts. The first part is just basically about her and her trying to make it through. And then the second part is a murder mystery. The writing is very poetic and flowery. This writing, I would put it on my wall. Like, it's just so beautiful. And this is a book that I definitely will revisit, and I love it so much. Now, after I read it, I found out at my local book club that Delia Owens, it's speculation at this point, what I've read and what is known is that she is a hardcore advocate for endangered species, and she was in Africa whenever she was in a situation where a poacher was trying to get at an animal or something, and the poacher died. And there's speculation that he was killed. Now, I actually worked with endangered animals, and I know that we had to put really hardcore security measures to protect not only the animals but ourselves from poachers. We had electrical fences, we had watchtowers, because I worked with elephants and they have their tusks, which are the ivory. Poachers can get a lot of money for male elephant tusks. So I am not going to pass a judgment on the author because I have no idea. She could have been doing self-defense. Like the government allowed her to leave. She was allowed to leave Africa, but they asked her not to come back. She was allowed to leave Africa. Like, she didn't like sneak out. So I don't know what happened. So where I'm at is I have no idea what happened. I am not a judge. I am not on a jury. I don't have any of the evidence in front of me to make a determination of what happened. So I mean, at this point, it's just mute to me. And it makes me feel very uncomfortable that people are trying to, be the law, basically. I don't know what I think about that. However, I think that this book is amazing and one of the best books I've read in a really long time. So, once again, so those are all the books I read in the month of June. It was a total of 3,077 pages, an average rating of, I believe, 3 point something, let's see. Average rating of 3.75, 3,077 pages read, and a total of 8 books. So there's that. There is that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Beck's Book signing off. Bye.